Today we're going to be looking at fucking holy shit, I butchered that, motherfucker. Today we're going to be taking a look at Tazavesh Gambit, talking about an easy pug route that I use for my runs when I'm getting my weekly vaults done, whether it's on alts or I'm just trying to get crests. Now this dungeon is unique because it has this semi-illusion of choice, especially at the start, but in this video I want to talk about what we're going to pull, how we're going to pull it, things to watch out for, and a lot of like the reasoning why some things are good and some things are bad to pull. We're going to talk about a couple of things like lust timings, as well as specific mobs to watch out for. I have already done 3 route videos for this season. This will be my 4th one, and I'm planning on covering the rest, but let me know which one you want to see next, so I can maybe prioritize that. Getting into the run, we have all of our cooldowns available, both offensively and defensively, so most groups have a kind of tendency to lust the first pack. I recommend jumping down, and as a tank, you want to make sure you're pulling the Shell Crusher first, getting a nice bit of aggro on this, and then you can walk this pack over to this Scalebinder, double Fishmancer, and then a couple of these Shore Runners. This Goliath should also be located here. He starts the dungeon in this position, and then the Shore Runners should also be running into this pack. If you can, I recommend trying to back the mobs up to this little peninsula, little thing. The main reasoning for that is because Murlocs run away when they hit 30% health, and they run for about 8 seconds. Now, generally on average, your group will have some type of natural slow applied, whether that's through Death and Decay, having a Frost Mage, Keg Smash, Thunderclap, Concentration. All of these abilities kind of slow, especially as like a tank player, but other DPS classes also apply things like Crippling Poison, etc. If you tank them further away, they shouldn't actually hit these other Murloc packs. They should generally stop before they actually social, making this pull not super lethal. The most volatile thing about this dungeon, especially at the start, is that social pulls are real, especially when we get closer to the first boss. So trying to keep Murlocs close is really important. Keeping slows applied are really important, and tanking near a cliff face or terrain or open water. As a tank, the big thing you're looking out for is the Shell Cracker cast from the Shell Crusher. This is a minor tank buster, does fizz dam, and it knocks you back. When they hit 50% health, they will attempt to cast their Cry. Their Cry bolsters all Murloc damage by 50%, 50% damage on water bolts, melee attacks, pufferfish, and then the Shell Cracker can be quite lethal. So making sure you lock this down is really important. As a tank player, personally, what I'll try to do is I try to get an early kick on the water bolt just to, get mobs grouped. And then I save my kick for these Shell Crushers, because this going off is, again, like I said, dangerous. The other thing you're looking out in this pull are going to be just general casts and pufferfishes on the ground, so those big blue circles. And whenever a Scalebinder spawns a fish stick, you're going to want to try to move the mobs near that said totem so it gets cleaved down. Now, there are a couple of classes that really struggle at killing this. There are certain abilities that for some reason still don't hit. Target cap classes have a hard time killing these totems. Arcane mages specifically really struggle at killing these totems. And for some reason, Flurry Strikes for the Brewmaster Monk don't hit these totems. For some reason, the other hero talent does, but Flurry Strikes doesn't. So there are certain things that won't affect them. So keep that in mind when you are pulling these Scalebinders. That was a long-winded rant for the first pull. Most of the rest of the mobs that you're going to see in here are going to be pretty much the same things you're seeing throughout the rest of the first area, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it. The next pull you're going to do is you're going to double up this next little island, and I recommend trying to pull them to the edge. So you're going to try to tank them right here in between the 2 packs near the water. This pull is going to consist of a single Fishmancer. You're going to have 2 Shell Crushers, and then 2 of these Scalebinders. If you pull them at the same time, they should spawn fish sticks around the same time, so big AoE damage should blow them up. The next pack you're going to pull is actually going to be this pack here, Goliath Shore Runners. You're going to ideally try to tank these mobs up against the edge, against the water, on the shoreline. The only thing I'd say is be careful of the Goliath's boulder throw. It's going to be a giant brown circle on the ground. One last thing I forgot to mention about these mobs is that they do this Tidal Stomp cast. Whenever this is happening, just use some type of minor defensive, barrier, divine protection, blur. I'm just like listing off some kind of like minor defensive buttons for some classes. Because this Tidal Stomp does do a little bit of casts. It's something for your healer to do, but if it overlaps with like a bolt, for example, from these Fishmancers, it can be one-shotty lethal-ish, but everything else is controllable. Once this pack goes down, specifically, you're going to chain it into this pack here. There's also the possibility that when these mobs run away, they're going to run in this direction, and they might social pull this. If it gets pulled, there's a reason it's in the route. I see this pack get pulled so many times that I've just included it at this point because it's just easier. When you pull this pack as well, try to pull it back to this area, because then you're creating this nice, like, big barrier. The mobs can't run this far in 8 seconds. So the further you pull them away, the less you have to worry about mobs fleeing. They'll eventually come back after 8 or 10 seconds or so. Next, we're going to double up these 2 packs. Once again, pull them back to this like little island here. You're going to tank the mobs roughly right here. Same kind of deal. You have a couple of casters, you have a couple of fish sticks that are going to spawn, and you have a couple of tank busters. That's it. So now we are done with the first thing. You are, again, holding on the shoreline, tanking them on these X's, and then you are ready to go into the next boss area. So the general goal before hitting the first boss is you want to be roughly around that 50% mark, and we're going to luckily get that from killing these guardians. Now, some groups split this 2 and 2. Some groups pull this all into boss like this. Some groups can pull these 2 actually onto this last pull that we just did. It's really up to you. If you want to play it nice and safe and hold W, just do the 4 together. Tank them in this area until the room fills up, and then you can tank them in this next little area until the room fills up. These guys do a frontal called Crackle, which targets the tank. So the tank, you want to try to aim them like at one of the walls. So I like to aim it at this wall here, and the Crackles will just go like this, and then you'll like step over, and then you'll aim them into the corner. They'll go like this. You'll move into this next room. You can aim them this way, and just keep aiming the Crackles like against the wall. That's a lot of drawing. I'm going to delete all this so it doesn't mess up the route. And then we're going to do, of course, the first boss. So we're at 51.73%. This is good. The next area is pretty chill. You're not going to be able to do much with this first pull, but it is pretty lethal for the tank. There are these deckhands. They hit very hard. Their melee hits are insane. And this Enrage is really powerful. It makes them deal double damage. When this goes off, you have a couple of options. You can Soothe. If you don't have Soothes in your kit or in your group's kit, you can use big defensives, which is fine, or you can kite. Kiting is, I think, the best option because you might want to save your defensives for some of the next trash, but it's really up to the tank's discretion. There is a way to trigger this RP. The trigger is roughly like right here on the hill. So you can either have your healer run up, or when you're kiting out these first Super Saiyans, the tank can kite and trigger the RP by walking past the threshold. You'll know you start the RP because the boss will have a bunch of voice lines. If you start the RP, actually I'll put a little note here. RP start line. You can then actually double up some of these packs if you want. Now, if you don't start the RP early, this pack G27 will actually be located like way down here in the corner. Not a big deal. If that's the case, I recommend pulling this pack first. It has 2 Tide Sages, 1 Officer, and a Deckhand. 1 Deckhand by itself isn't scary. The Tide Sages can be a little rough because they do this Brackish Bolt, which just does a lot of frost damage. The Officers, though, are the sleeper in this pull. They do this thing called Sword Toss. It's instant cast. It cleaves anyone nearby, and it does a ton of physical damage. So, like, Clothies, like mages, will die pretty quickly if they get targeted by Sword Tosses. They need to make this a cast. Not an interruptible cast, but, like, make it a 1 second, 1.5 second cast that just targets a random player and that you can see, because this cast, along with the Ricochet or the Eviscerators in Halls of Atonement, are the worst mobs in existence. When you can't tell the damage is coming and it gets to one-shot territory, that's when this dungeons don't get fun. Anyways, you'll clear this room 1 pack at a time. Again, if you're comfortable, double up this pack. It's not a big deal. You will have an extra Officer, you will have an extra kick, and you will have 2 deckhands in this pull. It can be scary. So if you're not comfortable, just do it 1 pack at a time. You have this is a very, I would say, a lenient timer in lower keys, so you're good. Okay, moving to the final area. This area can be kind of explosive, so I want to talk about a few things that are going on. So I like to drag one of these Starseers down to this first pack. You can do either side. It doesn't matter. If you want to go to the north side, that's fine, or the south. I normally go to the south. I don't know why. It's just the way that I like to go. There's a weird tree over here that always blocks my vision, so I like playing on this side. I don't know. No real reason. When you do this pull, the tank generally wants to grab this first kick on this Hyperlight Bolt, and that allows you to pull this mob back towards the Starseer. You're going to end up tanking this pack like right here, These accomplices do a lot of tank damage. They don't say anything in their kit, but I'm pretty sure they have a buff that makes them do additional arcane damage on all of their hits. So use big mitigation when you have a lot of these accomplices in the pull. And the other thing you're looking out for is this unstable rift cast. The first cast is going to generally happen around the 10-second mark into a pull. It's going to be Hyperlight Bolt 2 or 3 times, and then it's rift. As a tank, if you want control, kick the first bolt. When you see the unstable rift, stun it, and then your kick should come back up, and then you're able to kick it, and then you can just kick the rift every single time. The Starseer, on the other hand, does a nasty frontal, and will spawn a thing called a Wandering Pulsar, which pulses AoE damage. Very scary. A lot of DPS sometimes don't swap to it or don't realize that it spawns until it's too late. So as a tank, if you notice that it spawns, it'll spawn generally within 15 yards of the mob of this Starseer. Drag all of the mobs on top of it. It'll naturally then get cleaved down because DPS kind of have Zug brain. Once that pull goes down, I recommend doing the middle pull by itself. There's double Ritualists, which cast these rifts, which will one-shot your group in higher keys. And they're spamming bolts. So this pull can be pretty annoying. Like in higher keys, you'll see groups like double this up with another Starseer. This is only if you're super coordinated. I don't recommend doing that. Like I said, accomplices do this a lot of tank damage, so use defensives in this pull. Then you're going to replicate your first pull in this area in the third pull. You're going to pull one of the Starseers with this pack. If you're focusing down the Starseer, it's pretty easy to then eventually pull this one in at the end. So yeah, kind of same deal. Kick the Ritualist, pull the Starseer on top, and then pull all of the mobs onto the Pulsar that spawns. Finally, you're going to finish it up with the last Starseer. Again, this area can be chained. Let's say you're doing this pack here, the Ritualists die, but these accomplices are still at like 30% health. Then you can chain it into this Starseer here or something like that. Chain it once it's low, and then when all of these mobs die and this guy's at 50% health, you can chain it into this pack here, and then when this guy dies, you can then pull this one in. So this area is like an entire chain, but that'll put you at a little over 100%, but not quite at 101. And then you'll finish it up, of course, with Soleil. So that is the routing for Gambits. In terms of lust timings, I kind of forgot to mention it after the first pull. Your next lust can just be used on a Hooktail if you want. It can also be used to double up some of these packs as well. If you're on a good pace, you'll notice that Lust will either come up, it should be coming up during this boss fight, and you can use it on this pull, any of this trash, you can use it on Hooktail, and then you'll use it on Soleil in phase 2. That's the general Lust timing. Anyways, let me know if you have any questions down below, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.